Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles. She's out and about this morning, so I thought I would take some time to editorialize a little bit. Jack Dorsey from Twitter posted last night a link to Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place. And I want to talk about that because I think everything is returning to its right place. You know, I could have said every little thing is going to be all right, but that would have been too much. No, I am kidding. I am joking. No, actually, I want to talk about how things are, I believe, returning to normalcy, to center. The pendulum is swinging. I've been talking about that for months on this channel that felt like there was something in the air, that people are just over far left activism. They're over the wokeness. They're over things that don't make money. If companies don't come back to center on their own, the market is going to force them to come back to center. But so much has happened. It's hard to really pinpoint exactly, when the shift began. But I think it definitely was during the lockdown. People saw what the end game was for all of this, and it was basically to keep us under the thumb of the government, the powers that be, the media companies, and people had a lot of time to think while in lockdown, and they decided, hey, they kind of like to be able to think for themselves, right? So we're gonna talk about this. I think, I don't think the culture war, quote unquote culture war, is over. But I think the biggest battles have kind of been fought. And I think that it's going to sort of go out with a whimper instead of a big bang. That people are just going to slowly drift back to center. Companies are going to slowly drift back to center. And, we're going to look back in 5 or 6 years and be like, remember that really weird period of time after Trump got elected that like everybody lost their shit? Yeah, that was weird. Look at all these TV programs and commercials and all this shit. The Internet Archive from 2015, 2016 to 2022. God, that was weird. And those TV shows and all of this shit's not going to age well. It's kind of like in the mid 80s we had all these very special episodes. Don't do drugs. Feed the children. Are the children fed? Have the children been fed? Yeah, I think the children are still starving. We just don't hear about it, unfortunately. Early 90s, we had Earth Day and all that stuff. And you look back at these programs and you can see what the talking points of the era. And I think the woke era, the era of wokeness, is going to be looked back upon with fresh eyes years from now. People are going to look back at it and cringe and be like, God, how did we deal with all this shit, all these weird ass TV shows and commercials and messaging everywhere. And how did people not lose their freaking minds? Well, they did. In lockdown, people lost their freaking minds. So let's talk about this. Before I get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 265,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk about pop culture. Unfortunately, we talk about the culture wars because we don't have a choice. It has seeped into everything. And when we first started, covering this kind of stuff on the channel, more and more it became a case of like old school fans versus the wave of wokeness from corporations and social media and news outlets. And we're like, where the hell is all this coming from? And it was like a switch had been flipped and everybody had their marching orders to go out and start attacking fans. But as we saw later, it was part of a bigger thing, right? Because pop culture does form people's opinions. Pop culture influences people tremendously. And if you control the culture, you control the audience, you control the crowd. And so, we had no idea, doing this 4 or 5 years ago that, there was a much bigger issue. We just thought it was weird that everybody was getting political all of a sudden and everybody started saying the same things and that old school fans were being demonized. People have always bitched about pop culture, but silencing old school fans, calling people Nazis for not liking Star Wars and all this other crazy ass shit. Absolutely insane. It's not going to be looked at very fondly by people in the future. I don't think. But anyway, so, we've talked a lot about Twitter, and I'm actually going to have another Twitter video this morning. Twitter is ground zero for all of this stuff. I mean, this is why Elon Musk, I think, spent $44 billion to buy it, because Twitter, even though everybody knows it's a dumpster fire that has a lot of influence, right? In politics and the media especially. And Jack Dorsey, who I think, my personal opinion on this, and I've seen some other people share this opinion, I think Jack Dorsey set Elon up to buy Twitter as his final FU to the board for ousting him, because I guess these guys were friends or whatever. But he posted everything in its right place, and he talked about how he believes the future of Twitter lies with Elon Musk. I'll read that a little bit. Obviously, a lot of people disagree. So I got to wonder how much of Twitter's pivot into wokeness and censorship was Jack Dorsey and how much of it was the board, or the Borg, depending on which way you look at it. So classic song, Radiohead from Kid A. I love Twitter. Twitter is the closest thing we have to global consciousness. The idea and service is all that matters to me, and I will do whatever it takes to protect both. Twitter as a company has always been my sole issue and my biggest regret. It has been owned by Wall Street and the ad model. Taking it back from Wall Street is the correct first step. Remember when people were like, Occupy Wall Street, down with Wall Street. And then here we are in 2022, and it's like, let's stand for corporations like Disney and Pfizer. What the hell happened? There's a difference between hippies and hipsters, I guess. In principle, I don't believe anyone should own or run Twitter. It wants to be a public good at a protocol level, not a company, solving for the problem of it being a company. However, Elon is the singular solution I trust. I trust his mission to extend the light of consciousness. Elon's goal of creating a platform that is maximally trusted and broadly inclusive is the right one. This was also Parag Agrawal's goal, which is why I chose him. Thank you both for getting the company out of an impossible situation. This is the right path. I believe it with all my heart. He's out, I'm sure. I'm so happy Twitter will continue to serve the public conversation. So I just want to talk about how this is part of a bigger conversation. And it's happened so quickly. Within the last 6 months, we've seen, BuzzFeed freaking tank. They bought the Huffington Post. We're seeing other media outlets collapse, digital media outlets, the ones that led the charge against conservatives and against, old school fans and anyone who wasn't far left. All of these media outlets are cratering. CNN, again, I believe firmly. I have very strong libertarian leanings, right? Not to get political, but anybody that knows me knows I like capitalism. I do. CNN Plus lasted 3 weeks because it had to stand on its own 2 feet. It had to produce revenue, and only 150,000 people were willing to pay extra for CNN. And David Zaslav shut it down. Disney's getting all kinds of backlash right now for stepping into politics. Netflix is collapsing, under its own weight. And what we're going to see, I believe, and this is going to be the same with comics, it's going to be the same with animation. What we're going to see is a return to creating products that sell to a large number of people out of necessity. It might not be that the people that work at these studios want to create that kind of content. They might want to do some artsy fartsy woke stuff or whatever, and they might be able to do that if they make enough money selling to a large number of people. But I feel like we're kind of crawling out of the late 70s and coming into the 1980s when, capitalism ruled and the pop culture ruled because it was all about making stuff that a lot of people liked. And you can say, well, all the crap that came out of the 80s was designed to sell toys. All the crap that came out of the 80s was designed to sell cereal. It was all overly commercial and yada, yada, yada. But you know what? People still remember even the most obscure cartoon shows from the 1980s. Hollywood keeps rebooting stuff from the 1980s because so many people loved it because it was designed for mass appeal. I think we're going to return to that. I think we're going to have to return to that. I think cancel culture is being canceled now that it's affected people on the left too. Now, it was easy to point at your adversaries and be like, oh, look at that, fuck nugget got canceled by Twitter. Yay. But when it starts creeping into Sarah Silverman getting canceled, or you know what I'm saying? And it's so bad that she supposedly left the Democratic Party. We know we've gone too far. When you've got Bill Maher doing a 180, and actually Bill Maher hasn't done a 180. Bill Maher is still Bill Maher. I mean, you look at him in the 90s and he's still saying basically the same shit. It's just that the zeitgeist from the right and the left, it has changed. The left has become more authoritarian. It used to be that the left was where, it was liberals. Liberals were on the left because liberals were all for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to love whoever you wanted to love. That was what being a liberal was all about. And that changed. It became authoritarian, just like on the right we had, religious zealots that turned conservatism, the Republican Party into kind of an authoritarian thing too, The difference is, though, I think that the right never fully had control of the media like the left does. So, things are changing. Things are going to balance out. And, I think it's over. I mean, I think the worst part is over. I think we're going to see things kind of peter out slowly over the next couple of years. I think the worst part of this Orwellian nightmare may be behind us. I mean, I'm saying stay vigilant for sure. But I think that the media is being held accountable, finally. I think that the public is going to have more of a voice. I think that the market is ultimately going to decide what goes and what stays, as it should be. And I'm not saying there isn't a market for more diverse pop culture or different ideas or anything like that. To be very clear, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the market is ultimately going to decide what is popular, what sticks around, what gets canceled, instead of having these corporations artificially prop up properties because it's about the virtue signal. And this article was sent to me by Martin, who kicks a lot of stuff over, and I'd missed it. It's from the Telegraph. The fight back against woke capitalism has finally begun. Well, I don't think it's finally begun. I think it's been here for a while. Just a lot of people haven't been paying attention. Little things here and there. Even, Wizards of the Coast. We talked about Wizards of the Coast and all their virtue signaling and all that. Now they're going back to the well and they're bringing up Spelljammer and Dragonlance. They're dredging them up again. I know it's going to be a zombified version of it, but I think they realize they need the old school fans. Star Wars. They tried to push the sequel trilogy and tried to push High Republic for years, and it didn't really go anywhere. So now it's like, yep, Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. That's what we're going to do. Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. You want that, right? But unfortunately, they're, bastardized versions. Well, we don't know about Obi-Wan yet, but Boba Fett was boring as hell. Anyway, let's look at this. Talking about Disney World special tax status being withdrawn, Elon Musk has called out the politically correct sanctimonious programming at Netflix. A new group in the U.S. has been launched to organize shareholder revolts against management teams that prioritize liberal activism over making profits for their shareholders, while a handful of tech companies have become so fed up with their staff demanding they take a stance on one issue or another, they have banned political discussion in the workplace. We've talked about that with Shopify, especially. Coinbase is another one. They're like, we're tired of the politics. We have to make money, guys. Like, you can do activism on your own time, but we have to make money. Taken one by one, none of these amounts to very much, but add them all together and a pattern is starting to emerge. The woke corporation, with its incessant virtue signaling, its childish posturing, and its endless, expensively publicized sermonizing, is finally getting its comeuppance. This is true. In reality, it's long overdue. The only genuine social purpose of a private company is to make decent product at a fair price and to pay its staff and suppliers on time. Everything else is just a distraction, and it's time that the fight back began. It's been here. The pushback has begun. It began a couple of years ago. It just hadn't reached critical mass yet. And I think Musk buying Twitter and DeSantis slapping down Disney, regardless of what you feel about the situation, those were highly publicized backhand slaps toward the woke corporation mentality. Last week, former McDonald's chief executive Ed Rensi launched the Boardroom Initiative to push for shareholder revolts against corporate giants promoting political campaigns over profits. Rensi is the man who created the Chicken McNugget, for which some of us at least are eternally grateful he's not to be trifled with. His group has already started mobilizing shareholders in Bank of America to organize against it, pushing critical race theory training on staff, and it has a range of other companies in its sights. That comes on the back of companies such as Coinbase banning political discussions at work. Its boss, Brian Armstrong, even offered generous severance terms to any staff who felt uncomfortable with that. And to go back to that, we've talked about Coinbase. We've talked about Shopify, saying they were going to be neutral. We've talked about Substack. We talk about Kickstarter. Kickstarter, which pandered to woke, broke comic book artists for years, all of a sudden was like, oh shit, we got to make money. And they terminated basically the people that were gatekeeping Kickstarter. And now they're pivoting into blockchain technology and licensing out the technology. Now Kickstarter bad because NFTs and blockchain and shit that these people don't even understand, but they're not going to use Kickstarter. So now they're trying to push in Indiegogo, and I think it's going to go the same way. I mean, I'm not saying that the people at these companies, especially since a lot of them are based in Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, I don't think a lot of them necessarily agree with right-wing politics. That's not the issue. The issue is to make sure everybody has a right to say what they want to say. You have to give everybody the right to say what they want to say, and they can't police speech because eventually it bites you in the ass. It always does. Again, cancel culture started out with the most extreme voices, and eventually it started, once they were gone, then it started moving toward the middle until very tame hot takes, lukewarm hot takes, jokes that you made 10 years ago, 5 years ago, following the wrong person on social media. Those became grounds to terminate you from your job, blacklist you from Hollywood. It's ending. It's absolutely ending. Put all of this together, and one point is clearly emerging. The fight back against woke capitalism has begun, and now the fight back has started. It's only going to grow and grow. Of course, there's nothing wrong with companies keeping up with the times. Everyone agrees that they should be sensitive to all the different views among staff, customers, and suppliers, that they should develop talent regardless of background, open recruitment to a wide variety of different people, and make sure that the board and senior management are not only filled with middle-aged white guys. I agree with that. That's just being good at running a company. But there are three big problems with the version of ultra-liberal activist capitalism that has emerged over the last few years. Small groups of staff within companies have hijacked what started as mainstream corporate social responsibility departments and pushed them toward more and more extreme positions. Yeah, this is true, and it is. It's usually a small group of people. Even freaking Image Comics, which is in Portland. Image Comics started in part by Eric Larson, right? Image Comics, their office staff decided they were going to unionize and they were going to hold the company hostage. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It's basically a bunch of, activists fresh out of college. They get into a company, a lot of them working in PR or marketing or whatever, and they get into a company and they immediately set their sights on turning that company into a tool for activism. That's what happened at Kickstarter. Camilla Zhang, she was there for like a month, if you read the one Wired article, and within a month she was already trying to unionize everyone, not for better working conditions, but to be able to have the ability to cancel projects and dictate what they published. I'm like, at that point, Camilla, you go start your own platform, and then you can decide who gets to use it and who doesn't, but you can't force the company to kneel to your sensibilities, and these companies have been held hostage. The fight back is long overdue. I agree. It's only going to get worse from here because I think we're going to start seeing more quarterly results roll in, especially from companies like Disney. I don't think they're going to be good. And I think other companies are going to look at this and be like, this is madness. Why are we doing this? Oh, because Jill in the marketing department with her gender studies degree from Berkeley or whatever, told us we had to do it because that's what all the kids are into now. Well, clearly not, because we're losing money, right? So I'm going to wrap this one up. It's changing, guys. It definitely is changing. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.